The door slammed open, a crack of thunder against the storm outside. Snow swirled in like smoke, and with it came 20 strangers dressed for a ballroom, not a roadside diner. Tuxedos, gowns, diamonds flashing under the weak neon glow. Black Waitress Shelters, 20 millionaires in a snowstorm. No one in that room knew they were stepping into a story that would shake their pride by morning. Their shoes dragged slush across the linoleum, perfume and cologne mixed with the scent of frying oil. They huddled together, teeth chattering, yet still carried themselves like royalty displaced from a throne. Behind the counter, Sarah Johnson stood waiting. 36 years old, apron faded from years of work, shoes softened thin from endless shifts. She didn't blink at the glittering gowns or silk coats, her eyes fixed only on what mattered, their trembling hands, calm, steady. Then came the voice that cut the air sharper than the wind outside. Alexander Hayes. Broad-shouldered, cufflinks studded with diamonds, the kind of man headlines called untouchable. He stripped off his gloves slowly, looking around the diner like it was a stable. "Smells like grease," he sneered, making sure every ear heard. "And these chairs, what are they? For children?" The crowd laughed, grateful for the script he handed them. Scoffs rolled through the booths. They mocked the flickering sign, the cracked floor tiles, even the salt shakers lined neatly on each table. To them, this wasn't shelter, it was comedy. And Sarah was invisible. She wiped the counter once, calm as ever, slid a coffee pot back onto its warmer. Not a word, not a flicker of shame. Alexander leaned into the moment, smirk tugging his mouth as his cufflinks caught the light. His words dripped arrogance. "So, waitress," he called, voice thick with mockery, "can this little shack handle 20 millionaires tonight?" The laughter spiked again, cruel and sharp. Glasses tapped like champagne flutes. A phone camera zoomed in on Sarah, capturing her against the dull glow of neon, as if she were a prop in their theater. But Sarah didn't break. She stepped forward, resting her hands on the counter, her eyes steady. Her voice, quiet but edged with steel, cut clean through the noise. "It can handle anyone who's cold and hungry." The words hit harder than the storm against the glass. Laughter stalled. Breath caught in throats. Even Alexander's grin faltered, his smirk tugging downward as silence spread heavy across the diner. For the first time, the balance shifted. 5-star service in a truck stop? Now this I've got to see. The words cut through the air as Alexander Hayes leaned back, smirking while Sarah set steaming cups of coffee on the counter. The laughter came quick. Snide chuckles, whispers, the sound of glass tapping like champagne flutes in a boardroom. One man raised his phone, filming as if this night were a performance staged for their amusement. Sarah said nothing. She carried the tray with steady hands, moving between booths as the blizzard clawed at the windows. Each cup of soup she set down was a small shield against the storm. Each steaming bowl met with mocking applause. "Charity cooking!" Someone jeered. "Careful, these Michelin snowflakes might melt in your soup," another chimed in, sending a ripple of laughter across the room. Still, Sarah stayed focused. She leaned down, placing her own worn jacket across the shoulders of a woman shivering in silk. No words, no explanations, just warmth where it was needed. Alexander wasn't finished. He raised his wrist high so the Rolex on it caught the weak neon glow. "Do you even know who you're serving, waitress? Or do you just feed anyone who wanders in off the street?" The others roared, delighted by his performance. Names of companies, fortunes, and estates spilled from their lips like trophies. One by one, they lifted their glasses, toasting to wealth inside a diner they despised. Phones hovered higher now, recording Sarah as if she were an exhibit. Something small, something beneath them. But Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was even, steady, cutting through their noise like a blade of glass on stone. "Out here, titles don't keep the cold away. Hot soup does." The laughter faltered just slightly. A few eyes flicked downward, uneasy. A silence pressed in, heavy enough to break the rhythm of their arrogance. Alexander lifted his spoon slowly, mockery etched across his face. He dipped it into the soup, exaggerated the motion, then tasted. He paused. For the first time, the smirk slipped. His eyes flickered with something he hadn't expected. Surprise. The diner froze with him, waiting. "Don't tell me this is all we've got," Alexander scoffed, kicking the leg of a heater that had coughed its last breath. The storm outside howled, glass shuddered, and the air inside the diner grew colder by the minute. Sarah walked past him without a word. She crouched, tightened a loose wire, struck the unit with the flat of her hand, and suddenly a dull hum came alive. Warmth seeped back into the booth. The millionaires, draped in silks and furs, leaned closer, grateful but silent. She moved with quiet authority, spreading out blankets she had pulled from a back room, faded, hand-stitched, the kind that carried history. She draped them across shoulders, tucked them over shivering knees. One woman whispered, "She gave us her last ones." Another murmured, "And she hasn't asked for a dime." Alexander wasn't moved. He leaned back, smirk tugging his lips. "Blankets from a thrift store don't make you a saint." His words cut, but fewer laughed this time. Sarah didn't answer. She carried steaming bowls from the kitchen, serving each person with the same steady hand. Those who mocked her got no less, no more. Slowly, the rhythm of survival became hers to control. When the fire was stoked, when the soup was poured, when silence settled like snow. At the counter, while tending the fire, her eyes lingered on a frame tucked against the wall, an old photograph. A woman in the same apron, smiling faintly. Her mother. The jaw beneath Sarah's calm face tightened, but she said nothing. The picture returned to shadow, her secret kept for now. Around the room, the tone shifted. Chuckles dulled into murmurs, then into the hush of cold bodies clinging to warmth. A man whispered almost to himself, "She hasn't asked who we are." Not once, but Alexander wouldn't yield. His voice rose sharp, trying to reclaim the room. "Don't mistake charity for class," he declared, his words cracking against the walls. He raised his glass of untouched wine, sneering. "Tomorrow we'll forget this shack ever existed." The laughter didn't follow. Silence spread thick and heavy. Even the storm outside seemed to pause, as every eye turned toward him, and then back to her. "Name your price. I'll pay double." The offer came from a man wrapped in fur, his diamond ring flashing as he reached for his wallet. Sarah shook her head, voice calm but firm. "Keep it. You'll need that when the road's open. Tonight it's just survival." The storm outside hammered the diner like fists on glass. Snow piled against the door, the wind screaming down the chimney. Inside, Sarah moved from one task to another without pause. Her hands trembled with exhaustion, but her motions never faltered. She coaxed sputtering coffee pots back to life, stoked the fire until the walls glowed with its warmth, checked on every guest huddled beneath her faded blankets. She never asked for thanks. She never demanded respect. Her silence carried more weight than their titles. A woman in sequins whispered to her neighbor. "She hasn't slept," a man added, "and she hasn't asked us for a thing." Their words hung awkwardly, soft cracks in the wall of arrogance that had filled the diner hours before. At one booth, a figure watched with sharper eyes than the rest. Dr. Evelyn Carter, known in financial circles for dismantling egos with a single analysis. Tonight, she said little, but her gaze followed Sarah's every move. The quiet strength, the refusal to bow, the dignity in each small act. Laughter had thinned out, replaced by sighs, by silence, by the rumble of empty stomachs quieted only by bowls of Sarah's soup. The same millionaires who once mocked the chipped mugs now cradled them for warmth, careful not to spill a drop. The diner, once a punchline, had become their only refuge. Hour after hour passed, the storm showing no mercy. Sarah's shoulders sagged, yet she pressed on. A fallen spoon replaced, another blanket tucked around a shaking arm. Her service carried no complaint, no pride, only the certainty that these people, no matter their names or fortunes, were human in the cold. And then, at last, the storm broke. A thin strip of dawn cut through the frosted windows, painting the room in pale light. The millionaires stirred, gathering coats, fixing jewelry, preparing to return to a world where their power mattered again. Few looked her way, most left without a word. Sarah, drained and pale, wiped down the counters with slow, heavy movements. She slumped slightly, one hand gripping the cloth, the other steadying herself on the edge of the table, but not everyone left. Dr. Evelyn Carter lingered near the door, her sharp eyes locked on Sarah. Unlike the rest, she did not turn away. She stayed, silent, intent, watching a truth none of the others seemed willing to see. The hiss of the coffee pot filled the quiet morning. Sarah moved like she always did, apron tied, hands steady, wiping down counters still faintly warm from last night's fire. Sunlight broke across the snowdrifts outside, melting edges into shining rivers along the street. It felt like the storm had finally passed. Then came the sound, a low rumble at first like distant thunder. It grew louder, heavier, shaking the glass in its frame. Sarah froze, rag in hand, eyes narrowing. Outside, heads turned. A boy on a bicycle stopped in the street, staring wide-eyed. Engines, not one, not 10. Hundreds. Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Rolls-Royces. Polished chrome and mirrored windows stretched down the block like a gleaming parade. The town had never seen anything like it. Traffic snarled, horns blared, but no one moved. People abandoned cars just to step into the street, phones raised high. Inside the diner, Sarah set the rag aside. She walked to the door, pushed it open, and stepped into the cold air. Her apron still hung at her waist, her shoes scuffed, her face calm. Against the flood of flashing cameras and roaring engines, she looked small, but unshaken. From the first car, a black Rolls-Royce, a door swung open. Out stepped Alexander Hayes, no smirk, no mockery. His tailored coat caught the light, but his face told a different story now. The arrogance that had filled every word the night before was gone. He looked uncertain. The crowd surged forward, whispers rising like sparks. "That's him. Is this real?" Phones lifted higher, screens glowing as the diner that had once been a punchline became the epicenter of national attention. Alexander's eyes found Sarah. He hesitated, adjusting his cufflinks with hands that no longer looked steady. Cameras clicked, recording every detail. For the first time, he seemed smaller than her, dwarfed not by height but by the weight of what she had given when he offered nothing. He cleared his throat. The sound caught on dozens of microphones. The crowd hushed. This wasn't the voice of mockery. It was something else entirely. Something no one expected, and Sarah, still standing in her faded apron, waited. "We were given more dignity in this shack than our wealth could ever buy." Alexander Hayes' voice carried across the frozen street, sharp against the morning air. The crowd gasped. Phones shot higher, recording what no one thought they'd hear. A titan of industry, a man built on arrogance, humbled in front of everyone. Sarah stood in her apron, expression steady. She didn't move, didn't flinch, while flashes lit her face like lightning. Then came the shock. Keys, dozens, then hundreds, lifted into the air. Chrome, leather, fobs with golden crests. A line of chauffeurs and assistants stepped forward, presenting them in velvet boxes. Not one, but 100 luxury cars. Rolls-Royces, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, all lined up as gifts. A collective gesture of apology, of respect, from the very people who had once mocked her chipped mugs and faded blankets. The crowd erupted, voices mixing disbelief with cheers. Reporters shoved microphones closer. "Why the cars?" someone shouted. A man in a tux whispered back, almost ashamed. "Because she gave more with nothing than we gave with everything." And then, through the noise, Dr. Evelyn Carter stepped forward. Her presence commanded attention without needing to raise her voice. She turned to the cameras, her tone precise, undeniable. This woman sheltered 20 of the richest people in America, without asking who they were. That is true leadership. Applause crashed through the street, echoing off brick walls. Even the storm's silence seemed to bow to it. Sarah blinked, her breath catching. She pressed a hand against the counter behind her, as if steadying herself. Her voice came out soft, trembling yet strong enough to reach the microphones. "I only did what anyone should." For the first time, her eyes glistened. But the tears didn't fall. She held steady, dignity unbroken. The moment swelled, flashes, cheers, shouts. Reporters surged forward, microphones outstretched. Her name already trending across the world. A diner once mocked as worthless now burned as a symbol of human worth. And yet, as the noise grew, Sarah's gaze drifted past the cameras, past the applause, toward something deeper, heavier, still waiting to be told. "Will you sell this place? Move into a mansion?" A reporter shouted, cameras flashing in Sarah's face. She looked up from the counter she was wiping, apron still tied at her waist, and shook her head. Her voice was steady, unshaken by the storm of microphones. "This place was my mother's," she said. "And it'll stay open." The media frenzy only grew. News vans lined the street. Offers poured in. Book deals, television spots, even invitations to glamorous galas. But Sarah stayed in the diner, brewing coffee in chipped mugs, serving the same way she had the night the storm forced 20 millionaires into her care. And then came the most unexpected change of all. Alexander Hayes, the man who once mocked her with every breath, now stood as her loudest defender. He didn't buy her silence with gifts. He honored it with action. A foundation launched in her mother's name, funds dedicated to helping small towns, to preserving the dignity she had shown when the world wasn't watching. The cameras captured the headlines, but behind closed doors, Sarah's truth finally surfaced. Late one evening, a photograph slipped into focus, the same one behind the counter. Her mother smiling in that faded apron. The story unrolled in whispers. How Sarah grew up in poverty, how she lost her mother young, how she rebuilt the diner piece by piece with hands blistered from work. Every scar, every sacrifice had carved out the strength that stunned the world in one night. Viewers realized her calm wasn't born of chance. It was forged in fire, sharpened by hunger, steadied by years of carrying burdens no one saw. The storm hadn't created her dignity. It only revealed what was already there. The millionaires drifted back to their towers and estates. But Sarah's diner remained. More than a building, it became a landmark. Tourists stopped not for food, but for memory. Documentaries filmed, articles written. Generations would pass by and point to the place where wealth bowed before humility. And when the noise quieted, Sarah's words lingered, etched into the story of that night. Greatness is not in what you own, but in how you treat those who have nothing to give you back.